Oh yeah, so this is a preview and prediction of Callum Smith versus John Ryder. This fight is taking place on Saturday night over in Liverpool, and I'm just going to give my thoughts and sort of how I think this fight will go. Now, obviously, we know Callum Smith's credentials. I mean, he's coming in with a record of 26-0 with 19 knockouts. Now, obviously, this is a guy that's very rangy. I mean, he's a cruiserweight. Let's be completely honest about it. He would and probably could make cruiser. He's absolutely massive. How he makes 168 is a mystery to anybody. Now, John Ryder, who he's obviously up against, is coming into this fight 28-4. Now, John Ryder has had a bit of a sort of resurgence in his career. He was sort of I want to say a British level middleweight, and so to see him now, and he is a legitimate world level super middleweight. He moved up in weight, which, as a guy that's only 5'9", is quite strange to see, because obviously he's more the size of a light middle. He's sort of a small light middle. To see him up at super middle is strange, but he functions a hell of a lot better, he's a lot more active, and seems to have a lot more sort of gas in the tank at this weight. Now, obviously he's taken losses to the likes of Rocky Fielding and Jack Armfield in the past, but that was going back a couple of years ago, and the Rocky Fielding loss was quite contentious, and a lot of people don't feel like he lost that fight anyway. Since then, he's had good wins over, I think it's Patrick Nielsen, Jamie Cox, of course, which was a very good win. On the undercard of, I'm trying to think, it was one of the World Boxing Super Series fights, I believe. No, it wasn't, was it? Was that Hey Bellew? I can't remember. Hey Bellew 2? I honestly can't remember. I'm trying to think what was the undercard for. Anyway, I digress. And he also beat a couple of unbeaten fighters as well, while picking up the interim WBA world title. So he's had some good wins. As I say, he's had a bit of resurgence in his career. He's a very, very slick southpaw. He's a very nice fighter to watch. I actually would have quite liked to have seen him go up against Billy Joe Saunders, because both southpaws, both quite slick, both sort of small for the weight. I think that could have been quite a good fight. But anyway, he's going up against Callum Smith. Now, obviously, Callum Smith is the big favourite in this fight. He's the hometown fighter, World Boxing Super Series winner, WBA Super Middleweight Champion, WBC Diamond Belt holder for whatever that's worth. And really, I think he's the favourite. I want to say 70-30. I would make it in Smith's favour. Obviously, he's had that very big win over George Groves just over a year ago to win the World Boxing Super Series. Although since then, he really has not pushed on from that. He's fought Hassan Dam, who is obviously, as we know, a career middleweight, a good middleweight. Not a great middleweight, but just a good middleweight. Obviously, he knocked him out, so it looked impressive. Over on I think it was the Joshua Ruiz card, wasn't it? And, he looked good doing it, but as I say, he hasn't been active. And it's always a worry when a fighter sort of has a good career highlight win like that, again, like Smith did against Groves, but then doesn't push on from it. It's not a good look. So, inactivity, is that a concern for Smith? Possibly, but then, in fairness, he actually fought more recently than Ryder, so again, neither of them have been incredibly active of recent, so it's sort of much of a muchness there. Now, you've got to remember that Callum Smith is I want to say the money man. I don't think he brings in particularly, I don't think he's a particularly big money maker, but he is the hometown fighter. He is the favourite. He is the world champion. He is the one with the unbeaten record. So if it goes to points, unless John Ryder absolutely beats the brakes off Callum Smith, which I can't see happening, unless he boxes on the back foot. And sort of, I think if he counter-punches on the back foot, it's possible to outbox Smith, but for me, honestly, I don't think Smith is the best super middleweight as well. I'm just going to put that out there. But I think he is just too big, too strong, unfortunately, because we're dealing with somebody who I said could make light middle. Really, I don't know why he's at super middle, but he looks better for it, as I said, but, he's a sort of a light middleweight fighting someone who could make cruiser. So, for me, it's difficult to see how Ryder overcomes the size disadvantage. I think if he can stay on the inside but counterpunch, that could work. But then, if he stays on the outside, he's just going to get picked off all day long and probably get stopped. So, it's a difficult one because really, it's one of those things, You don't like the politics to come into it, because as I say, Ryder is a nice boxer to watch. He's very slick, he's quite quick, he's good on his feet, but unfortunately politics does come into it, and so with that in mind, you wonder how he could win a decision. And when it comes to power, obviously Smith has the advantage, so I think I'm leaning towards Smith late stoppage or Smith points. I think it could be a bit of an ugly fight, to be honest, because Ryder can be a bit of a spoiler. But that being said, Ryder can dig in as well. I'll be honest with you, and I don't want to curse it. I'm not sure I can see an upset on this one, just because we're not talking about neutral ground. We're not talking about even an external fight. This is an in-house fight where there is a fighter who has a clearly a clear advantage physically, as well as advantages from sort of the promoting point of view. So really, I'm picking Callum Smith quite comfortably, as I say, 70-30. But don't be surprised if he loses rounds, because as I say, I don't actually think Smith is necessarily the best super middleweight. Not sure who is. With Smith, I honestly, and look, this is no disrespect to Callum Smith, I see someone who's big and can crack a bit, but that's all I really see. I mean, you look at like the Nicky Holzken fight, he was made to look quite ordinary there. I don't think he's necessarily someone who's that special, to be honest. I think he is just fucking big, to be honest, and I think that's really the only way of putting it. He's someone that is so big. I mean, he could really, I mean, he as I say, he could legitimately make cruiserweight, this guy. So he's so big that he sort of just overpowers his competition. But I mean, looking up in the rankings as well, I mean, there are people who, I mean, I think it's difficult to see necessarily who beats him. I think a Plant would be a good fight. The problem is with super middleweight, as it has been for the last few years, particularly since Froch and that ilk, Froch and Ward, etc., moved on from the division, it hasn't been a historically strong division. You've got people like Truax hanging around there still. There's Katigi, who's quite good. Avni Yildirim is a bit basic, but again, okay. And really, I mean, they're the sort of fighters you got. So maybe at the moment, Callum Smith is the best of the bunch, in fairness. I'm just going back on what I said. Maybe he is the best, but look, I don't think he will remain undefeated. I don't think that they repeat. I think a lot of the people hanging around the super middleweight division really are quite undersized. I mean, you look at Billy Joe Saunders, for Christ's sake. I mean, I remember an interview with Ingle a couple of years ago, or about a year or so ago, and Ingle said he wanted him to fight at light middle. He said, really, he's a bit too big for middle. He shouldn't really be fighting at middle. So what he's doing up at super middle, I have no idea. So I think really Billy Joe Saunders is a bit undersized at the weight. Chris Eubank Jr. we know is undersized at the weight. Rocky Fielding just isn't very good. Fedor Chudinov, we know what we get with him, and we know when he steps up to the highest level, he doesn't necessarily deliver. David Benavidez, a lot of controversy surrounding him. I think he could be quite good. I like what I see with Benavidez. He's very young. I don't think they'll be rushing to make Benavidez versus Smith, to be honest with you. I'll be surprised if they do. William Monroe Jr., we know he can't punch. And Caleb Plant, another one of those fighters, I'll be honest, he is good, he's unbeaten. But how good? He hasn't fought at the highest level. He's fought as Katigi, he got a UD over as Katigi, but other than that, we haven't really seen him at a good enough level to know how good Callum Plant is. And yeah, he looks good, but again, we don't know how good he is. So, going back and sort of after going a little bit of a tangent there, I'm picking Smith to beat Ryder, either on points or late stoppage. I'll be surprised if it's an early blowout. Also, don't be surprised if Ryder has his moments in this fight. But I think hometown cooking and such, I'm not sure we're going to see any sort of decision win for Ryder, unfortunately. But as I said, that's going to be my pick. And what do you guys think? So thank you very much and take care.